What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today we're going to be starting our in-depth look into Keyforge. We've already done an intro video, link in the description. We've already done a how to play video, link in the description. And it probably is a good idea to watch the how to play video before you watch this one, just so you understand a bit more about how the game works. Today, Keyforge is out tomorrow. This is the day before the release. And we are starting to dig into what the decks are, how they work, etc. Remember that all of these decks are 100% completely unique, which means that you're not going to ever play this deck. But I'm going to give you some examples. I'm going to see what we can learn about these particular decks and about what you get in a deck. We're going to draw some conclusions based off of 2 deck lists, which is not the most sensible thing. And then we're going to have a quick run through one of the decks to see how they work. Let me know in the comment section what Keyforge videos you want. Do you want me to dig into cards? Do you want me to dig into decks? Do you want me to dig into strategies, houses? Let me know, ladies and gentlemen, because I would be delighted to do whatever. So the lovely Timur Yusuf, a very good friend of mine, did send me a couple of deck lists yesterday. He said, "Hey Wossy, good news. I went to a pre-release event at a local game store. Would you like to see the deck list for the 2 decks that I bought?" And I said, "Tim, yes I would. That would be lovely." And we have Fallen Dutch Zinnia and Vivid Loon Torch Halford Novice. You get a character card when you buy a deck. And this character card shows you the character as which you're playing, and it also gives you a deck list on the back, showing you all the cards in the deck. What this means is that cards cannot be switched out. You've got essentially a built-in deck list, so if you're one of them naughty boys or girls that's trying to swap cards to give yourself an advantage, that is not something you're allowed to do. Frankly, ladies and gentlemen, that's rather naughty. But it actually goes further than that, because the name of your character is written on the bottom of each of your cards, so there's no way around this. You are stuck with your deck. So what can we learn by looking at these 2 decks side by side? Well, first of all, you get a 36 card deck, and it features 3 of the 7 houses. But more than that, it seems that we actually get 12 cards from each house. Now remember, from the Learn to Play video, you can only use cards from 1 house during your turn, so it makes sense to have an even mix. Otherwise, if you ended up with 30 cards from 1 house, that would give you a huge advantage in gameplay, because you would be able to play more cards during your turn. During your turn, you can play any card without cost, just so long as it's from the house you nominate at the beginning of your turn. And we can see here that we do get duplicate cards, but not very much. So in the Fallen Dutch Zinnia list, we see that there are 2 Control the Weak and 2 Gateway to This in the This section of the deck. If we have a little look at Sanctum, there's absolutely no overlap there. They're all individual cards. And then if we have a look at Untamed, they are again all individual cards. If we have a look at the Vivid Loon deck, then we see that over in Brobnar, we do actually see a couple of Ganger Chieftain. And this is a new game, so my pronunciations are probably going to be terrible in places. If we have a little look at logos, we get a couple of Fogify, but all the others are unique. And if we have a look at shadows, they all look fairly unique as well. So both of these decks had 2 doubles, so to speak. But I don't know if that means much going forward. We know that these decks are made on an algorithm, but I don't know exactly how that works. Clearly you get 3 houses, clearly you get 12 cards from each house. Are they there to stop you getting a certain number of the same card? How many doubles can you have? Do you get 2 doubles per deck? Can you have 3 or 4 of a card in a deck? The honest answer is we don't know yet. We don't have enough information. Clearly I'm going to be gathering as many deck lists as I can to try and figure this out. But also, do we actually get many combos here? So if we look in the Fallen Zinnia deck, we have both Bear Flute and we have Ancient Bear. Now, Ancient Bear is your big bad creature card, and then Bear Flute allows you to fully heal an Ancient Bear. If there are no Ancient Bears in play, search your deck and discard pile and put each Ancient Bear from them into your hand. If you do, shuffle your discard pile into your deck. So, does that mean that there's never going to be a time where a deck is printed with Bear Flute, but no Ancient Bear? The answer is we don't know by now, but given that we know the decks are made on an algorithm, it's a fair assumption to make. So that's what you get in the deck. Let's finish off the video today by having a look at the Fallen Dutch Zinnia deck and just seeing what's in there and how much fun it looks. I will of course do an analysis of the other deck, but I think that's more of a tomorrow video than a today video. The other thing to note here, this game isn't out yet. Some of us have played a few games here or there. Nobody knows what's good. Nobody knows what cards are better than others. We've got good guesses, but until we all start playing a whole bunch of games of a whole bunch of different decks and start having tournaments, nobody's going to really know. All we can do is make assumptions. It's a new game. It is the best thing about new games. So the first of the houses in this deck is this. And we have 2 copies of Control the Weak. Control the Weak says you choose a house on your opponent's identity card, one of the 3. Your opponent must choose that house as their active house on their next turn. So you can hopefully have a look at what's in play, what's been discarded, etc. and go, oh, this house is probably going to have fewer cards in my opponent's hand. Let's hurt them. We have a copy of Dance of Doom. Choose a number, destroy each creature with power equal to that number. We have 2 gateway to this, destroy each creature and gain 3 chains. Chains essentially give you disadvantages that end up leading you to draw fewer cards in the future. We see a copy of Dominator Bauble. It's an action card that lets you use a friendly creature. That's quite nice. We see a Lash of Broken Dreams, an artifact that has an action you can use, whereby during your opponent's next turn, keys cost 3 more Amber to actually forge. That sounds kind of disruptive. We see 1 copy of Lifewood here. It's got an Omni power. That means you can use it regardless of which house you've chosen as your active. And you sacrifice this artifact, and then your opponent cannot play creatures on their next turn. Now, I'm sure you're getting a bit of a sense here that this is kind of disruptive. We then see some creatures. We've got Ember Imp. Now, this is got 2 power and no real defense, but it says your opponent cannot play more than 2 cards each turn. So it's weak, but it's disruptive, which fits with the theme. We have 1 copy of Shula here. 5 power, that's quite a bit better, but still no armor here. If your opponent has 4 Amber or more, you get to steal 1. We have a copy of Succubus. 3 power, very low. No armor, so again, the stats here are not looking amazing. But during your opponent's draw card step, they fill their hand to 1 less. You can see that this is incredibly disruptive, and you get all 3 of these creatures down, and your opponent can only play 2 cards, you're stealing their Ember, and they get to refill their hand with 1 fewer card. That's kind of hilarious, as long as you're the one doing it. And finally, we see 1 copy of The Terror. 5 power, no armor. If your opponent has no Amber, you gain 2. That sounds kind of fun. I like that card. As long as your opponent doesn't have any Ember. I'm still not 100% sure how to pronounce that. I say Amber because it's an A and an E joined together, but it's just a little bit weird. Moving on, we also have a bunch of cards from Sanctum, including Cleansing Wave. An action card that heals 1 damage from each creature, and you gain an Amber for each creature healed this way. We see a copy of One Stood Against Many, again an action card. Ready and fight with a friendly creature 3 times, each time against a different enemy creature, resolving the fights 1 at a time. Got a powerful creature, you can go on a rampage. Plus I should point out that does have the Amber bonus, so when you use that action you get 1, which is quite nice. We see 1 copy of Radiant Truth, which also has an Amber bonus, an action that stuns each enemy creature that isn't on a flank, and 1 copy of Take Hostages, which also has an Amber bonus. It's an action, And then for the remainder of the turn, each time a friendly creature fights, you capture an Ember. So you're probably starting to see a bit of a theme here, that these Sanctum cards, they love getting and stealing Ember. They are all about the repin, ladies and gentlemen. Gorm of On, an artifact. You sacrifice it and destroy one of your opponent's artifacts. And then as we get into the creatures, we've got Bulwark, 4 power, 2 armor. You notice how all the discards just didn't have much armor. Not the case here, but given that they're all drawn in big fancy armor, that's probably to be expected. 4 power, 2 armor, and each of your neighbors gets +2 armor. Champion Tabris, 6 power, 2 armor, and when you fight you capture an Ember, which is quite nice. We see Commander Ramiel here, 3 power, no armor, so not a big character in terms of stats, but when you reap with it, you get to use a friendly non-Sanctum creature, which means you get to use an extra creature that isn't in your house during your turn while you're reaping. Yes, please. We see that you have a Grey Monk, 3 power, 0 armor. Each friendly creature gets +1 armor. So even though you don't have armor, you're helping all your buddies out. And when you reap, you heal 2 from a creature. He's a nice little protector, isn't he? Speaking of which, you get a Protectrix here. And that has 5 power, 0 armor, which is weird when you look at the card. And when you reap, you may fully heal a creature. If you do, that creature cannot be dealt damage for the remainder of the turn. So you attack and you can't take any damage, but when it goes to your opponent's turn, you totally can. We see a Raiding Knight, which has 4 power, 2 armor, and when you play it, you capture an Ember. And finally, a Sequis, again, apologies for the pronunciations if they're not right, 4 power, 2 armor, and when you reap, you capture an Ember. So clearly here, with Sanctum, it's all about trying to get this Ember going. And then finally we have Untamed. At least initially, Untamed seems like my favourite house. This seems like the one towards which I am leaning. And we have a Squawker, an action card which does capture you an Ember when you play it. And when you play, you get to ready a Mars creature or stun a non-Mars creature. If you ended up with this in a deck where you also had Mars creatures, that could give you a great advantage readying a character. But you can't because there's no Mars in this deck. What I was talking about before, but I do understand you can also stun a non-Mars creature. We have Cooperative Hunting. When you play it, you deal 1 damage for each friendly creature in play. You may divide this damage amongst any number of creatures. We see Key Charge here, which when you play it, you lose an Ember, but if you do, you may forge a key at its current cost. Unless you forge an extra key during your turn, given that you win the game when you forge 3 keys, that sounds good to me. Nocturnal Maneuver gives you an Ember when you play it, and you can exhaust up to 3 creatures. Regrowth also gives you an Ember when you play it, and that lets you return a creature from your discard pile to your hand, which means you get to use it that little bit faster. We have the combo that we talked about earlier, where we have both an Ancient Bear and a Bear Flute. Now, Ancient Bear's quite nice. 5 power is good. No armor's not amazing. But it gives you Assault 2. Before this creature attacks, you get to deal 2 damage to the attacked enemy. Nice. And then Bear Flute fully heals an Ancient Bear in play, or lets you search your deck and discard pile and put each Ancient Bear from them into your hand. Bearing in mind you're going to be playing Bear Flute when you have put Untamed as your house for the turn. If you end up with a deck with Bear Flute and multiple Ancient Bears, that's going to be phenomenal. This deck has 1 Ancient Bear, 1 Bear Flute. Imagine if you had more. I should mention there's also the action Save the Pack. Destroy each damaged creature and gain 1 chain. Moving into the last couple of creatures we see here then, we have a Big Twig, 7 power, that's the most we've got in this deck. Still no armor. Untamed don't look like they have very much armor here. And it can only fight stunned creatures, but when you reap, you both stun and exhaust a creature, which kind of helps. Chota Hazri has 3 power, but no armor. When you play it, you lose an Ember, But then you can forge a key at its current cost, and remember, forging keys wins you the game. So if you've got 7 or more amber in hand, you play this, you lose 1, but then you get to forge a key, so you're fine. Flaxia gives you 4 power, 0 armor, but you gain 2 ember if you control more creatures than your opponent. And finally, Mermook has 3 power, 0 armor, but it means that your opponent's keys cost 1 more ember. No Snufflegator in this deck, which makes me kind of sad. So far, Snufflegator looks like it's probably my favourite card. I don't think it's particularly good, I just love Snufflegator. Although it does have a bit of competition from Neutron Shark. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is what's in a Keyforge deck. I've talked you through one of the decks. We've talked about what's in the decks. We have speculated. One thing I should mention before we finish here, one of these decks, that being the Dutch Zinnia, has 3 rare cards. We have talked about them all. It is Dance of Doom, One Stood Against Many, and Bear Flute. But then we did talk about how Bear Flute looks amazing. And the other deck also has 3 rare cards. Them being Iron Obelisk, Crazy Killing Machine, and Treasure Map. And you'll notice that both the decks have 1 rare card for each house represented. That seems like a pattern, but then only looking at 2 decks, we don't know for sure, but it does seem coincidental. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be bringing you way more Keyforge coverage over the next weeks, months, hopefully years. Go Keyforge. So let me know in the comment section what you want to hear about Keyforge, and let me know what you think about it. Go nuts, but please do remember the rule. Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, and follow me on Twitter @TheWossy. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves. Until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wossy Plays.